Welcome. So I really appreciate you for tuning in to the webinar today. This is the Why Invest in Real Estate webinar, guys. I'm your host, Mikel. I'm the owner of Mikel Realty. I'm a commercial real estate broker in Louisiana. I specialize mainly in commercial properties, but I do some residential at times. I also am a landlord. I own over 100 doors. So I get both sides of it. I get the investor side and I get the real estate agent side, which gives me a unique ability to help investors and also train individuals that want to get into real estate investing. And the question I always get is, why invest in real estate, guys? And I like to break it down into four levers. So appreciation, cash flow, depreciation, and leverage. And if you can get really good at understanding those four concepts, you'll be able to analyze any deal and you'll be able to be a very successful real estate investor, because that is the foundation. Appreciation is simply the increase in value in real estate over time. So just to give you an example, if you live in California, and you had a family member out there that passed away and y'all inherited the house. Now the house is worth $1 million. That's an example of appreciation. Most real estate, basic real estate, goes up in value over time. Now, if we're talking about commercial real estate, like apartment buildings, things that generate income, then you can improve the appreciation by going up on the rents and different things like that. So just remember, appreciation is the increase in value over time. If you're seeing that benefit, you are very lucky. Cash flow is simply rent. Most people know what cash flow is. They just hear it in terms of rent. That's cash flow. Depreciation is an automatic tax write-off, okay, that the IRS gives you. So it's given. Okay, it saves you a bunch of money at the end of the year. There's so many other tax write-offs that you get in real estate. You can write off a portion of your mortgage payment. You can write off maintenance. You can write off just about anything you can think of. You can write off in real estate. So that's really one of the biggest reasons everyone should invest in real estate. And also leverage. When you think about leverage in real estate, so you think about the down payment. So if you're using FHA, VA, something like that, then your down payment is obviously a lot smaller. FHA is 3 to 5%. But when you go to commercial properties, conventional loans are typically 15 to 20% down. But let's say you're buying a $1 million apartment building and you have to put 20% down. You're spending 20%, $200,000 to control $1 million piece of property. Now, when you combine cash flow, appreciation, and depreciation into that asset, then you're getting so many different benefits from controlling a large piece of real estate for a small percentage down to own it. Okay, so that's the benefit of leverage. So let's go to and for the sake of these slides, guys, don't worry. I'm gonna put a link in the comments. You can click the link so you can have access to my latest book for free. And then also you'll get all of this. I'll also post a link of my private Facebook group. I got all these in the file section. So you can just go through, click, and pluck out what you need. So we just talked about the taxable benefits. So why would you invest in real estate? Number one, you can invest in real estate while keeping your day job. So you don't necessarily have to be a full-time real estate investor to be successful. I would even argue that, it's better if in the beginning, especially if you have a 9 to 5, because you think about what a bank's going to require for you to be able to borrow money from them. They're going to need your last 2 tax returns, your last 2 pay stubs, W-2s, and all of that. So if you're a 9 to 5 that's making pretty good money, you're in a much better position to take advantage of investing in real estate, and you can create your little nest egg while you're working, which is very good. Okay. So when we think about, the different types of real estate investing out there, so we hear about, raw land, and not that many people invest in raw land. Well, new investors, because they don't really know what to do with it. But if we're thinking about raw land, there's several things you can do with raw land. Okay. You can subdivide. You can take a 5-acre tract and you can break it down into 1-acre lots and you can sell them. Or you can take a piece of raw land and you can do like I did when I first got in the game. You can build a house on it to flip and sell, or if you want to be technical with it and you want to, get into the industrial industry, if you got a large tract of land, like a 10, 15, 20 acre piece of land, You can find, an industrial company that needs a yard for their trucks. Or they may, be providing fiber optic cables, to the area where you live, and they need a place to store all their materials. So you can rent your land out there. So many different ways that you can monetize raw land. You just have to partner with an experienced real estate broker and allow them to help you put a plan together. Okay. But for the sake of raw land, we can subdivide, we can develop a house on it, we can rent the land out we call that a lay down yard, or you can develop something like an apartment complex on it. There are a lot of different things you can do. Don't overlook raw land. Okay. Now, secondly, single family houses, probably the most common real estate investment out there. And the reason why is because a lot of smaller families who once bought a house, then they were forced to upgrade, get a bigger house, and then they kept the smaller house to rent out. So that's why we have so many single family houses. It's the most popular asset class out there. But you got to think about it. A duplex, which is 2 units, triplex 3, quadplex 4, they're also considered residential. Okay. And the advantage of residential housing is it qualifies for government funding, which means that you can use 3 to 5% to buy as long as you live in one. So single family houses is a very good investment for first time investors. Okay. You can house hack, live in one side of a duplex, rent the other one out. Think about it. If you do that, you're going to get access to what? Cash flow, depreciation. You spend 3%, 3 to 5% down. So you utilize leverage to control a large asset with a small down payment. Okay. And as you're paying the mortgage balance down, your net worth is steady going up because you're creating equity. Okay. You're creating equity. And then also, if you're in an area where appreciation is kicking in, then you're taking advantage of that as well. So duplexes are a really good place to start. Duplex, triplex, quadplex, single family house. The next asset class is small apartment buildings. Okay. So small apartment buildings are typically 5 to 50 units. And you think about what's the advantage of owning a small apartment building. So let's go back to the 4 advantages. So with appreciation on an apartment building, I want you to know that you can improve the value of your apartment building by increasing the rent and decreasing the expenses. So when you bring in more money, okay, then your net operating income is higher. So now your asset is that much more valuable. Okay, you're creating equity. So that's the main advantage of owning an apartment building outside of the scale. So you think about if you own one rent house, and a hot water heater go out, it's going to cost you dearly. But if you own in 5 to 50 units, then obviously if you have one unit that has an issue, then you got 49 other units, that can help take care of that. So scale kicks in. When you think about cash flow, obviously having that residual cash flow coming in, that gives you the flexibility to not have to lean on your career as hard as you may be leaning on it now, because now you're creating income outside of, the earned income that you have to go to work for every day. Okay. So now let's go to large apartment buildings. So obviously large apartment buildings will be, 50 units and up. And obviously for new investors, this is not an ideal investment. A lot of people pool their monies together. New investors, they may put their money together, get with a larger syndicator, and just invest in a large apartment building. But just for the sake of owning a large apartment building, it's the same as, the 4 main points: appreciation, depreciation, leverage, and appreciation, depreciation, leverage, and cash flow. Okay. Now, commercial properties. I'm not going to talk too much about REITs. You can hit the stock market for that and just put your money in it like investing with Walmart or anybody else. For commercial properties are a really good asset class to own. Okay. If you stay in tune with your local government. Okay. So the advantage of owning a commercial building is what we call a triple net lease. And just to make it simple for you, that means that your tenant is going to take care of pretty much everything, maintenance, taxes. You just collect the check every month. So your bigger buildings like your Targets, your TGI Fridays, your steakhouses, all of that. They're in commercial buildings where they pay rent to a landlord. Wendy's, some of the most famous chains out there, they have landlords that go around the country with them and do nothing but develop property. Dollar General. So, they take care of everything. All the landlords do is develop, own the building, collect rent. Okay. So most of your commercial landlords, they don't do anything but collect money. They don't have a tenant calling them at night about a leaky faucet or any of that. So commercial's good, but you also notice around the country there are a lot of empty commercial buildings, right? Because the movement of the local economy has moved in different areas, which is why I say if you're going to invest in commercial property, you need to have a good idea of the city planning that's involved, so you don't invest in a bunch of property that's going to be empty after a while. Okay. So let's keep going. If this information is helping you any, be sure to click the link, join the private community, take, the real estate investment survey that I have. I do trainings, not much. I can only take about 10 to 15 people at a time. So if you want to get on the waiting list, like I said, click the link. I'd love to, have you consuming the information that I put out daily. And then if we ever can work together and fit it in, I'd love to have you. Let's talk about mobile homes. Okay. So mobile homes are a really good asset class to get involved with. Okay. Cheaper, but now due to inflation, mobile homes are renting for the same price as single family homes. So you think about, I had a friend that was buying, mobile homes for $2,000 and renting them out for $500-$600 a month. That's going on all around the country. So you think about the barrier to entry into real estate investing. Mobile homes, okay, is a really good asset class to invest in. Just think about that. You can get in for a very attractive price. Now, mobile homes, tax liens. So tax liens are very tricky, but you can go to your local tax sale at the end of the year and you can bid on properties. And if you win, you pay it. Then typically you have, it takes about 4 to 5 years of you consistently paying taxes for that property to revert in your name. Just keep in mind that do your proper due diligence, have a good title attorney that you deal with, because a lot of tax properties also have other issues going on with them where, a lender may have a lien against it. So these properties typically come with a lot of issues. Make sure you do your due diligence, have a good title attorney to check title on it to make sure title's clear. If it is, you get a house for pennies on a dollar. But a lot of investors buy these properties and they can't ever do anything with it because there's active liens against it. Okay. So let's go through what real estate investing strategy do you want to have? Okay, so there's a lot of different things you can do. If you already just flush with cash, then you can buy rental properties and just build up your cash reserve. But if you don't have a lot of cash built up, then obviously buying whole may not work for you. Buying whole is good for people who already have money. But if you're trying to build money, then obviously we need to talk about flipping. Flipping houses is when you buy low and you sell high. So for example, home A would be worth $100,000 if it was in good condition, but needs $20,000 worth of work. A typical house flipper would purchase the home for $50,000, okay, and put the $20,000 worth of work. If you add 50 and 20, that's 70%. I want you to keep in mind that with house flipping, there's a 70% rule. The 70% rule says that you should invest no more than 70% in the purchase price and the renovation cost of the after repair value. So if the house is worth $100,000, you should invest no more than $70,000, okay, in that project. Okay, so if you notice, they said $20,000 worth of work was needed. So if we apply the 70% rule, then 70% of 100,000 is 70,000. If 20,000 is needed for the renovation cost, then that means you only can pay $50,000 for the house. Okay, that leaves you with $30,000 in equity, 30% in equity. All right, so that's how that works. Okay, that's how traditional house flippers. Some people say they only like to be 60% in. Some tolerate 70. But just remember the 70% rule when you talk about flipping houses. Okay. Now wholesaling. So if you want to get into wholesaling, to make wholesaling make sense for you, wholesaling works like this. Let's say I own a property that I'm trying to sell for $100,000, but the property may be worth 150. A wholesaler would call me and say, "Hey, I'm interested in buying your house." You say, "Okay, great. Would you take 50,000 cash if I can close in 30 days?" And you'll say, "Yes, I would love to." "Okay, cool. Let's get it on the contract." So you'll sign a contract with them as if they're going to buy your property. Soon as you sign the contract, they go to a group of investors and say, "Hey, I got this great deal over here under contract, and I want to know if you want to take it over." And you say, "Yeah, I'll buy the contract." So they'll sell you the contract. You say, "Man, I think this house is a good deal at 70,000. Cool." You agree to buy the house from the wholesaler for 70,000, but he got on the contract for 50. So he's going to make $20,000 just by getting the house on the contract and selling you the contract. So a wholesaler just goes around getting a bunch of properties on the contract for a really cheap price, and then they take them to actual investors and try to sell it to them, or we call it assign it to them for a fee. Okay, and that's wholesaling that's a quick overview of what a wholesaler does. Okay, but it's a good way to build up cash. But there's a lot of different strategies that you can utilize to be very good at wholesaling. Let's see. So I want to get into some real world examples. So we'll just go through one. So let's say the house at 28 Cherry Street is currently listed at $145,000. And recent comps show that the similar homes nearby have sold for 140 and 170. And the 28 Cherry Street property needs about $25,000 worth of work. Therefore, if you pay 145 for it and put 25 in it, you've already spent 170. And that's before closing costs, holding costs, selling costs, unforeseen overages, and other fees that you'll end up paying. So you will likely be underwater. The cost is too high. But however, if a similar home was valued at 225, you would be fined, and you would indeed make your profit by buying that house for 145. So just remember the 70% rule. If you can develop a good strategy on how to determine what a property is worth, okay, the after repair value, then you would generally be really good at determining what to pay for a property. You need a general contractor who can come look at the property and give you a good cost on it. Okay, so now if you know the ARV and you know the cost of repairs, then you just subtract that to get the cost that you're going to offer to pay for the house. Remember, no more than 70%. Okay, no more than 70. So how to find investment properties right now? Online. Online, there's so many different websites. Like I use Realty. I use batchleads.com, where I can go in and just type in a property, and it'll give me who the owner is. It'll give me, sometimes it can give you some mortgage data. AI has kind of taken over the real estate industry, and there's so many different tools you can use to research properties. Okay, but I would say how to find investment properties. Early on investors, I would get them straight into the AI data so we can work smarter and not harder. Let's see. So creating your selection criteria. So there are a number of different items to consider adding to your criteria list as an investor. Obviously, town, neighborhood. Some investors have a preferred property size. Like I like 1,200 square foot houses. number of units. Some investors say, hey, I only like to buy 20 plus unit apartment buildings. Cap rate is a way that investors calculate how much return they're going to get on their money, the capitalization rate. Some investors say, hey, I don't want to buy a property unless it fits into like a 10% cap rate. Some investors buy based on cash flow, and some investors buy only on appreciation potential because they know that's the fastest way to grow extreme wealth if you buy an area that's highly appreciating. Okay, so um, so understanding the rules of investments, we already talked about the 70% rule. Let's go over the 1% rule. So according to the 1% rule, so monthly rent should be approximately 1% of the purchase price. So in other words, if you have $100,000 home that you're looking to buy, the rent should at least be $1,000 a month. $50,000 home, the rent should be $500. So what I will say is that just keep this in mind, that if you find a deal and it's 1%, it fits into the 1% rule. It doesn't mean buy it. It just means that this has the potential to be a good deal. So you start due diligence on it. You start looking at the financials. You walk the property to see what kind of condition it's in. So there's so many other things that could kill a deal, but just know for the sake of the 1% rule, if a property fits into the 1% rule, it just tells you that, okay, it's time to start looking closely at this property and maybe get it under contract. Make sense? All right. Let's go with the 50% rule is a good rule of thumb that will help to fairly accurately predict how much a property's expenses will cost you each month. So the 50% rule simply states that 50% of your income will be spent on expenses, okay? Not including the mortgage payments. So as mentioned above, most real estate listings will identify the monthly income of a property. By dividing that number in half, you can easily figure out how much you'll have left to pay the monthly mortgage with. All right. So real world example, an apartment building brings in $8,000 a month in income using the 50% rule. We're left with $4,000 for expenses. Okay. If the monthly mortgage payment on the property is $3,500 a month, you can reasonably assume a monthly cash flow of $500. 50% rule. So 70% rule, 50% rule, 1% rule. Just those three terms right there makes the webinar all worth it. Okay. So we already talked about the 70% rule. And so that is it for today, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And obviously, like I said, I put all the links in the comments, guys. I would love to have you a part of my community so we can go deeper. Today is just about teaching the basics of real estate investing and what that look like. And anybody could be successful in real estate if I can do it. I have 100 units, 100 plus units, 105. I'm a real estate broker too, so I put together large deals for investors, and I know that I can help you. As stated earlier, guys, I only have maximum capacity to train maybe 10 to 15 people at a time. So you can join my free community and take the survey, which you'll get on the waiting list. And if I have any openings, I'll definitely reach out to you and let you come so you can get some live training. All right. But I thank you for your time today.